Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. I have another hand today from the same $5,000 buy-in tournament that we've been reviewing for the last few weeks here at Poker News. And in this hand, we're playing 200-400 with a 30,000 chip effective stack. Andrew LuckyChewy Lichtenberger, who's a very, very good, very accomplished player, raises from the cutoff seat. He generally plays somewhat loose and aggressive, but very just strong poker. And I pick up ace-queen in the small blind. And my general read is that I think he's going to think that I'm on the tighter side and the slightly risk-averse side. That said, my read could just be wrong, but whenever I do think someone assumes I'm going to be on the tighter side or the perhaps slightly scared side, which often just happens because I haven't ran very many big bluffs on them that have been caught, or because I just haven't had very many good hands against this player in our history, I'm usually going to be looking to play on the more aggressive side. Alternatively, if someone thinks I'm a lunatic, I'm going to be more inclined to play on the tighter side, right? So he opens to 900, and I like to 3-bet to 3,200 with ace-queen offsuit from the small blind. I think this plays fine. I could also re-raise a little bit larger. When you're somewhat deep stacked, and here we are playing 75 big blinds deep, it's fine to just bloat the pot from out of position with your pretty good hands. And this is a value bet. I do think he's going to call with many hands that I dominate. So I'm okay with this. So we do make it 3,200. If he 4-bets, it's not going to be a great spot. And very often, I think I'm going to end up playing for a lot of money with this hand against him because he has proven to be pretty aggressive against me in the past. But again, that's sort of a scenario where you have to ask yourself, how wide am I willing to get it all in for 75 big blinds, cut off against small blind, against this particular opponent? And against some people, you should not get it all in with ace-king or pocket jacks, but against other people, ace-queen's just a very, very happy all-in. And I think that's close enough to the case here. Ace-queen's one of those hands where when you get it in, you're pretty unhappy about it. But we're against an aggressive opponent. All right, so anyway, I 3-bet, he calls, which is fine, and I do think he's going to call a lot. Flop comes 8-5-4. Now, this is a board where it's going to be very unlikely to connect with my 3-betting range, unless I'm 3-betting a lot of small suited connectors, which I know I would in this spot, but I'm not sure if he knows that I would in this spot. So I have to ask myself, would I be willing to bet the flop the turn and then jam the river with a hand like aces? Or, at least make bets on all three streets. And I think I would against Chewy, as we have him labeled here. So because of that, I need to have some bluffs in my range. And the obvious bluffing hands are hands like 9-7 suited, and then hands like 9-6 suited if I have that. What else is an obvious bluff hand? Well, hands like Jack-10 of spades are pretty great bluff hands. What I'm trying to show here is that ace-queen is not actually that great of a bluffing hand. One good thing about ace-queen is that it blocks aces and queens. Not that I think he has too many aces and queens. But this is a spot where if I bet the flop, I certainly don't need to check fold the turn. And the reason for that is because if I bet the flop, I do expect him to call a lot, like with any equity whatsoever. So if he's going to call the flop a lot, if I check the turn, the problem with that is, the problem with check folding at least, is that he's going to be betting with all the hands that are worse than mine. Like let's say he has Jack-10 of spades and he calls the flop. He's definitely going to bet on all the turns. And then also, if he has a really good hand, he's going to value bet, which is basically puts me in a pretty nasty spot from out of position immediately. And if he has a marginal made hand that beats me, he's just going to check it down and win the medium-sized pot. So betting the flop here and then checking the turn doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I either need to bet the flop with the idea of betting the turn in the river, just realize I'm turning this hand into a bluff, or I need to check the flop, but against someone like Chewy, who I know likes to apply pressure when checked to a decent amount of the time, I don't know if I want to be checking, just looking to check fold. And check calling also leads to some pretty rough spots just because I'm going to check call the flop and then check fold the turn. If you are going to check this hand, you want to make sure that you have lots and lots of hands in your range that can check call down. And that basically means you need to start checking your overpairs. And as you can see, that really leads to a shift in the way you have to play your whole range, because if you're checking your overpairs, well, now you really can't bet this flop much at all, right? Because when you bet, you just have a lot of garbage because you don't have the obvious value hands that are normally in your range. So when I bet this flop, I know I'm going to be barreling at least the flop in the turn and quite often the river. So 3,500, he calls. I can maybe even go a little bit smaller on the flop or bigger. It depends on what we're trying to accomplish. He does call. So the turn's a jack. A jack is a reasonable card for me. I would prefer a king for a better bluffing card just because I'm going to have more ace kings and king queens than I am hands like ace jack and king jack, although I could have ace jack and king jack. Queen jack, maybe I could have suited. Jack 10, maybe I could have suited. I would just fold the other versions of those before the flop from the small blind. So this is not the best card for me to bluff, but it is a card that should very rarely connect with him unless he has exactly ace jack that decided to float. I mean, like I said, you could have jack 10 of spades that floated. But notice only then jack 10 of spades and queen jack of spades and king jack of spades. So it's not like a ton of combinations of hands. So again, same story as on the flop. Am I continuing to fire multiple barrels? Well, if I check now, like I said, if he has a random marginal made hand like pocket sevens, he's just going to check behind and win, or he's going to bet small and even get some thin value from me. That said, I'm probably just going to check fold. So I have to decide if I want to use this hand as a bluff. And well, notice that if I had a jack, right, all those hands I just listed with a jack that I could have, I can now value bet, right? So this hand starts to become very near the bottom of my range. Of course, I could still have the straight draws like 10-9, 9-7, 9-6. Maybe I could have stuff like queen 9. And those hands would all be better bluffs than the ace queen just because those hands all have draws to an effective nut hand. And they cannot win at showdown. But I don't mind using this hand. And again, this is an adjustment of me being a little bit too bluff heavy. If I thought that he thought I was a lunatic and was going to call me down all the time, well, then I don't want to be bluffing here, right? I can just check. So I bet 3,500. He calls. And when we get to this spot, I already know I'm going to be jamming the river all in on a lot of rivers besides pretty much a 7 or a 6. Those are particularly bad rivers because those complete the straights, and I really have very few combinations of hands containing the straights. So for me to bet there, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So we get a 2 on the river, which is a pretty safe card. Obviously, 6-3 comes in, but I don't presume he's raising and then calling a 3-bet with 6-3. So in this scenario, he's going to have a lot of busted draws, which I actually beat, and a bunch of marginal made hands. Notice that the obvious kickers that he could have did not come in, like a 10 or a 9. Those are some kickers he would likely have with an 8 or a floated hand. The backdoor flush draw missed, which is nice. Really just, this is a really good run out for me whenever I decide to bet the flop with this hand. And I think I have to go for it, and I'm going to be going all in. Again, we're trying to get him to fold out a marginal hand, and notice that the way the pot has played out, I could certainly play aces in this way for value. So I like this. I think we have to go for it. Buckle up and hold on. I do go all in, and he folds. I don't know what he folds. The interesting thing about bluffing is you never really know if the guy just folded out 9-7 of diamonds or if he actually folded out something like Jack 10, right? Like if you can make your opponents fold Jack 10 and you know that, well, then clearly this bluff's great. But if he's only folding out garbage that I beat anyway, well, then my bluff's terrible, right? So that's the hard thing to know about bluffing. And when you're bluffing with a hand like this, I think a lot of the time you're bluffing the worst hand out of the pot, which doesn't really accomplish you anything. That said, I do think this is a spot where he is going to have a lot of medium pairs, and a lot of those medium pairs are in a miserable spot. So I'm okay with this hand, especially given the adjustment I said I was making at the top of this video that I'm going to be a little bit overly aggressive against this particular opponent. So that's going to be it for this hand. Let me know what you think on Twitter at Jonathan Little. If you like this video, please share it with your friends. That is by far the best thing you can do for me. Give us a retweet, and I'll be back next week with another fun poker hand. Thanks for watching.